To the United States, and it has been another chaotic week in the White House, with Donald Trump replacing another key member of his staff. Professor Ed Blakely is a former White House staffer for both Republican and Democratic presidents. He's now at the University of Sydney. He joins us here to talk the week that was in Washington. Ed, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I don't know if it's a good morning,
Yes.
but it is a morning.
Well, it's a good morning
to have
here.
you here
Maybe not
with
over
us,
there.
Ed.
Let's
That's
start
right.
with Obamacare and the attempts by the Republicans to repeal it with the so-called skinny bill. The man that stood in their way and essentially blocked that from passing in the Senate was John McCain, who managed to get himself out of hospital. He's had a major operation given his brain tumour, and he's proved to be very much a thorn in the side of Donald Trump.
A measure of the man. I've only met him once, and I met him in the Senate dining room, and when he looked you in the eye, you could tell this is a person who was taking you in. A really honest American who's done so much for his country, and basically, in his last days, he's doing more. He's a great man, a great American.
So in that move, we had McCain and also two other Republicans cross the floor to prevent the repeal going ahead. Was this about the failure of the legislation, or was it more about Trump's failure to get the message across?
It was a couple of things. One of them is everyone knew they were going to do this. The Senate is a small club, and people had to make their votes, but they were sure that they'd be countered by these three. People want a health care system, and no one's provided one that people are really assured of. That is where most Americans will have health care, particularly older Americans, because that's a burden on the middle class, and the high premiums. So what they have to do is reach across the aisle. When they do that, maybe we'll have the old Congress, where there was always a Republican and a Democrat on each bill to ensure. The White House is out of the game now. It is the Congress's game, not just to deliver health care, but to deliver America for the American people.
But do you feel that, more to Miriam's point there, that perhaps Donald Trump has just been so distracted with events within the White House that he's taken the eye off the ball? He should have been out there drumming up support for this repeal measure.
Well, he certainly has, but I think he's taking his eye off the ball because there's another ball out there that he's really afraid of. Kelly's not there to make sure the deck chairs are organized, to make sure that the drapes are ready and appointments are scheduled. He's there to get rid of anything that is Russian.
You're talking about the appointment of the new Chief of Staff, of course, Reince Priebus, having been dismissed by the President. What went wrong for him?
Well, what went wrong for him is that he continued to be a Republican and continued to be honest. And honesty and being a Republican were not what the president wanted. He wanted a sycophant. He wanted someone who do what he wanted. Now, the leaks were coming from Priebus. Priebus was leaking things because he couldn't get the president's attention. Things about sacking Mueller, etc. These came from Priebus, because Priebus was on the side of a democracy, and he was not on the side of doing things that were dishonest. That's why this White House has to be cleaned up and be really a White House that just does what the president wants, not necessarily what's best for the nation.
So are we seeing also a further distancing of President Trump from the Republican movement as a whole?
The party, he's distanced himself from the party, and now the Congress. Both sides. Paul Ryan and Priebus are close friends. Will Paul Ryan go out of his way for a Trump bill now? Will anyone in the Senate go out of their way for a Trump bill now? And the Senate has even issued warnings. If somebody touches Sessions, there may be a constitutional crisis. So here we have, and we've talked about this for several weeks, the president continually to draw a wall around himself, to isolate himself from the democratic institutions. Now he may lose a leader, Tillotson, from helping guide the U.S. institutions.
Hang on, let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Something of a revolving door at the White House at the moment. Obviously, we've had, well, you mentioned the threat to Jeff Sessions the Attorney General. Now you're saying the Secretary of State may have walked, because we haven't seen him for a while.
No, he's already taking a leave, and he may not come back. Let's go back to Sessions for a moment. Why is Kelly there? Kelly's there, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, to make sure Sessions goes. The president can't fire him. That would be obstruction of justice. But he can make it awfully difficult for him. And notice how he always does that through someone else. Kelly is the someone else. Kelly over-carried out the orders on the ban. Honest Australians couldn't get into the United States just last week. Here's a man who will carry the order just a little bit farther.
Are you saying that both Kelly and Scaramucci are essentially the president's henchmen?
They are the president's henchmen. That may be the title of a good book. Because they're there to get rid of the remnants of the Republican Party that's in the White House. The previous people are all going. That will clean the White House up for their own people. Tillotson, a person that we didn't know what way he would go, is turning out to be a person who's very concerned about the course of the democracy and absented himself from many Trump policies. So he's gotten on the outside of the president's inner circle. When you're in the cabinet, you've got to be in the inner circle. This is not just a team of rivals. This has become a team of sycophants.
So, but what is the point then? Because when we look at what the record is for the presidency with getting initiatives up and through the Congress in particular, there's not a great record at this stage. These tactics clearly aren't working.
This is the first president who has not, with both houses of Congress, been able to pass a significant bill. And the reason for that is he's outside of the congressional pale. What do we have here? We have a person who's more concerned about the Russian matter. The Russian matter is really eating him up. He's got to close that off before he can turn his attention to anything that's going on in the government.
Ed, I noticed that you've drawn some parallels with ancient history.
Yes, Caligula.
How so?
He was very popular in the beginning, and then he started thinking that he was a god and that he could rule the country rather than lead it. We have a troubling situation here. The Boy Scouts, the police officers, telling them things were almost unconstitutional. This is not a democratic leader who's trying to create great institutions. This is a person trying to make himself bigger than the law. And that's what several members of the Senate are already saying.
Well, that is not a pretty picture if we're delving back into that particular personage in history, but some interesting points that you make there. I'll take you back as well to the issue of Russia, because we do note as well that President Trump is expected to sign off on the sanctions against Russia, which is perhaps a move that has wedged him somewhat given the situation unfolding with the alleged collusion that's been...
He's expected. Will he? What will he give away to do that? There are only, 3 members of the House who didn't sign on, 2 members of the Senate. He has to sign that bill because it'll be overturned, and he'd look even worse if the bill were overturned by both houses of Congress. So he'll sign it. But what's going on behind closed doors? We don't really know.
Ed, as always, it's fascinating, and we look forward to what happens in the next 7 days.
Oh yes, we're bracing ourselves.
Oh my gosh, that's a long time.
A lot may happen in that time. Wonderful to have you
sure.
always. Thank you, Professor Ed
Thank you.
Blakely.